Since the biblical Joseph went from being a prisoner to prime minister of the whole Egypt, a global superpower that year, a couple men have risen above detention to lead their countries. Here are 10 presidents who were once prisoners. Mandela Nelson. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary, politician, and philanthropist who served as South Africa's president from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first black president and the first elected in a completely democratic election. Mandela was jailed several times, the most significant of which was his imprisonment from 1962 to 1990. He was sentenced to 28 years in jail for sabotage and conspiracy to violently overthrow the government through Umkhonto we Sizwe Spear of the Nation, abbreviated MK, a militant organization he co-founded in 1961. Mandela was ultimately given full release in February 1990. Following enormous agitation, global rallies, and pressure, he led the ANC to victory in the 1994 elections and was elected president of South Africa. Number 2. Fidel Castro. Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruz was a Cuban communist revolutionary and politician who served as Prime Minister of Cuba from 1959 to 1976 and then as president from 1976 to 2008. Castro ran for the House of Representatives in 1952 and was expected to win. However, in March 1952, a revolution headed by General Fulgencio Batista successfully ousted the government, and the planned election was cancelled, leaving Castro without a valid political platform and with little money to maintain his family. Batista established himself as dictator, consolidating control with the military and Cuba's economic elite. In reaction, Castro and other members of the Partido Ortodoxo formed the movement and plotted an insurgency. On July 26, 1953, Castro and around 150 allies launched an attack on the Moncada military barracks west of Santiago de Cuba in an effort to depose Batista. The attempt, however, failed, and Castro was apprehended, prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced to 15 years in jail. His brother Raul, the current president of Cuba, was also imprisoned. Castro and other offenders of the Moncada incident were released in 1955. When Batista was pressed to do so, he fought a guerrilla fight against Batista's soldiers between 1956 and 1959. Despite their numerical and technological advantage, Batista's army had no experience with guerrilla warfare, and Castro used field mines and ambushes to halt their onslaught. Many of Batista's soldiers deserted to Castro's revolutionaries, who had local public backing as well. Batista eventually escaped Cuba with $300 million, and a new provisional leader was inaugurated in. Castro quickly rose through the ranks of the government, becoming Prime Minister 1959 and President 1976. Number 3. Obasanjo Olusegun. Olusegun Matthew Akikiola Arimu Obasanjo, born the 5th of March 1937, is a former Nigerian army general who served as the country's president twice, initially as a military dictator from the 13th of February 1976 to the 1st of October 1979, and then as a democratically elected president from the 29th of May 1999 to the 29th of May 2007. During Sani Abacha's military rule, Obasanjo was imprisoned. He spoke out against the Abacha regime's human rights violations and was arrested and imprisoned for claimed participation in an unsuccessful coup based on tortured confession. Obasanjo was ultimately liberated following Abacha's death on June 8, 1998. Following his release, Obasanjo opted to run for president on the platform of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), defeating Chief Alufali, the joint candidate of the All People's Party (AP) and the Alliance for Democracy (AD). Obasanjo was elected with 62.6% of the vote. After 16 years of military dictatorship, He became Nigeria's first elected and civilian head of state. Number 4. Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah was Ghana's first prime minister and president, leading the country to independence from Britain in 1957, when the British colonial masters chose 6 middle-class Africans to draft a new constitution to give Ghana more self-government. In 1949, Nkrumah, the then leader of the convention's People Party CPP, knew that the recommendations would not give Ghana full independence and demanded that the constitution be written by a constituent assembly. Because the then British Governor Charles Arden Clark refused to commit to this, Nkrumah called for positive action, which resulted in a national strike on January 8, 1950. Because the strike had become violent, Nkrumah and other CPP officials were arrested and sentenced to 3 years in jail. Nkrumah's aide, Kama Agbeli Jibidama, controlled the CPP as Ghana prepared for elections, with Nkrumah influencing events through smuggled notes scrawled on toilet paper. Arden Clark ordered Nkrumah's release and requested him to form a government after the CPP won 34 of 38 seats, including Nkrumah's Accra constituency. He served as prime minister from then until Ghana gained complete independence in 1957, and he was elected president in 1960. 5. Lagos Ricardo Froilan Lagos, born March 2, 1938, is a Chilean lawyer, economist, and social democrat politician who served as Chile's president from 2000 to 2006. Lagos was pivotal in Chile's effort to re-establish democracy. He was a member of the Socialist Party of Chile's leadership until he became president in 2002. Prior to the creation of Lagos, Chile was controlled by the authoritarian General Augusto Pinochet, who took power from socialist President Salvador Allende in a coup on September 11, 1973. Lagos and his family fled the nation to Argentina to escape Pinochet's harsh dictatorship. Laos and his family, however, were homesick and finally returned to Chile, where he worked as a consultant and economist for the United Nations Regional Development Agency. In September 1986, an assassination attempt was launched against Pinochet, and over 50 persons known to be politically liberal were imprisoned, including Lagos. Lagos was detained for over 3 weeks despite the fact that he had nothing to do with the attempted assassination of the president. He emerged from the circumstances willing to do whatever it took to restore democracy to Chile. During the elections in December 1989, Lagos sought for a Senate seat but lost. He then became education minister under the new president, Patricio Aylwin Azakar. Lagos stood for president again in 1993, but failed in the primaries. This did not dissuade his ambition, and he campaigned again in 1999, finally winning in a runoff election in 2002. Number 6. Jomo Kenyatta. Jomo Kenyatta was a Kenyan anti-colonial campaigner who was instrumental in transforming Kenya from a British Empire colony to an independent republic. In 1947, he was elected president of the Kenya African Union, through which he pushed for independence from British colonial power, eliciting significant indigenous support while engendering hostility from European settlers. He was one of the Kapenguria Six who were arrested and charged with masterminding the anti-colonial Mau Mau uprising in 1952. He was convicted and imprisoned until 1959, when he was banished until 1961. Kenyatta was chosen president of KANU Kenya Africa National Union upon his release. National Union, and helped the party win the general election in 1963. He became prime minister and managed Kenya's transition to an independent country. He was elected president in 1964 and served until his death from a stroke in 1978. Moving on, number 7. Robert Mugabe. Robert Gabriel Mugabe, born the 21st of February 1924, is a Zimbabwean revolutionary and politician who who served as the country's leader from 1980 to the 21st of November 2017, when he was forced to retire following a bloodless coup. Mugabe was arrested in December 1963 and sentenced to 21 months in jail for his activity, opposition to British authority, and position as Secretary General of the Zimbabwe African National Union ZANU. Compassionate black warders used to sneak messages from Mugabe and other ZANU Executive Committee members to activists outside the prison. At the executive's request, ZANU supporters assaulted and killed the residents of a white-owned farm. The administration replied by indefinitely extending Mugabe's jail sentence. He was finally liberated in November 1974, and he resumed fighting guerrilla battles against white overlords in 1975. This eventually led to the UK granting Rhodesia complete independence on the condition that a democratic election be held. Mugabe led the ZANU-PF to victory in the election and was appointed Prime Minister in April 1980. Number 8. Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma was born on April 12, 1942 in Nkandla, South Africa. Zuma was South Africa's fourth president from 2009 until his resignation on February 14, 2018. Before ascending to the presidency, Zuma served as South Africa's deputy president from 1995 to 2005 under President Thabo Mbiki's government, but was fired due to corruption charges. Before and throughout his presidency, Zuma had substantial legal issues. Nevertheless, previous to any political position, Zuma served time in jail for his connection with a militant wing and for his battle against apartheid in South Africa. While a member of the African National Congress ANC, Zuma joined the ANC in 1959 and later became a member of its military branch, Umkhonto we Sizwe, in 1962. He was caught in 1963 and condemned to 10 years in jail on Robben Island for plotting to destabilize South Africa's apartheid regime. Zuma continued to work for the ANC after his release from prison, recruiting members for the Umkhonto we Sizwe. He remained an ANC member and advanced through the ranks. He was elected deputy president of the ANC in December 1997, and Thabo Mbeki named him deputy president of South Africa in June 1999. Following his legal difficulties, he was elected president of the ANC in 2007, 2 years before being elected president of South Africa. Number 9. President Muhammadu Buhari. Muhammadu Buhari, born the 17th of December 1942, is a retired Major General, the current president of Nigeria, and the former head of state from the 31st of December 1983 until the 27th of August 1985. Buhari went on to run 4 presidential elections after his first stint as a military head of state ended in a jail sentence, losing the first 3 until his triumph in 2015. Major General Buhari was deposed in an August 1985 military coup headed by General Ibrahim Babangida and other members of the ruling Supreme Military Council. Buhari was imprisoned for 3 years in a tiny guarded house in Benin beginning in 1985 and ending in 1988. He had access to 2 channels of television, and members of his family were permitted to visit him with Babangida's permission. Buhari ran and lost 3 different presidential elections between 2003 and 2011. He ran for office as a member of the All Nigeria People's Party ANPP in 2003 and 2007. In 2011, he switched parties to the Congress for Progressive Change PC, but lost to the PDP and its candidate, Goodluck Jonathan. Buhari finally won in 2015 when he ran as a candidate for the All Progressives Congress and beat President Goodluck Jonathan of the PDP. President Buhari's election in 2015 was seen as historic since it signified the end of the PDP's dominance since 1999. Number 10. Daniel Ortega. Daniel Ortega was a Sandinista guerrilla leader in Nicaragua before becoming president from 1984 to 1990. He was re-elected in 2007, 2011 and 2016, Ortega went to Managua with his family when he was young, later enrolling at Central American University. However, Ortega interrupted his studies and went underground in 1963 as a member of the Sandinista National Liberation Front FSLN, a party trying to oust Nicaragua's dictator Anastasio Somoza, who had governed the nation since 1937. Detention and release. Ortega and 3 other FSLN militants were jailed in 1967 during a bungled bank heist in which they sought to obtain cash for the organization. Ortega was tortured frequently in jail before being freed in 1974 as part of a hostage swap arrangement. Ortega returned to his own country after fleeing to Cuba for 6 months of guerrilla training. Over the next 5 years, he helped organize a military operation that eventually led Somoza to depart Managua and go into exile in 1979. President is elected. Following Somoza's departure, the country was ruled by a 5-member organization known as the Junta of National Reconstruction. Ortega was designated Junta Coordinator in 1981 as one of its primary members. 3 years later, Nicaraguan voters voted him president. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button for more videos like this.